Welcome to our first Primal Micro Podcast. I'm your host, Matt. Now you might ask, what is a micro podcast? And it's simply just something, it's a little shorter than a regular podcast. So you can get all the information you need and get on with your life. This is brought to you by Primal Health and Nutrition, where we are bringing you back to our roots. The entire episode can be downloaded, and there's a transcription if you'd like to go online at primalhn.com, and there's much more you can learn there through the blog. Today we're going to be talking about AIP diet, or the Autoimmune protocol. They also call it a bunch of different things, Paleo Autoimmune protocol, and so on and so forth. They like to take the words and switch them a bunch of different ways, but overall, words going toward, but we're going to call it the AIP diet. So, what are those items we need to avoid while living on the AIP diet? The first one is eggs. The next is emulsifiers. The next is fructose. Needs to be about around 20 grams per day. The next is nightshade. Fruits and vegetables like cayenne pepper, goji berries, other peppers, and tomatoes, and things similar to tomatoes. Next is non-nutritive sweeteners, like stevia is actually one of them. Sometimes people are surprised by that. Or monk fruit is another. Then, of course, you have the more brazen sweeteners, I guess you could say, are sucralose and xylitol, and the list can go on and on as far as that goes. Then inflammatory drugs should be avoided on the AIP diet. And finally, cross-reactive foods, nuts, seeds, including cocoa, coffee, and spices. So that's a pretty lengthy list, which probably makes the AIP diet the most restrictive diet on the planet. Anyone that has lived the diet can attest to that. There are many other diets that we will discuss in this program, but we'll focus here right now. I want to start by telling you a story about my sister, who has rheumatoid arthritis, RA. It didn't really manifest itself early in our lives, and she didn't even notice until after a couple pregnancies. I remember at a family reunion, she was walking around and essentially agonizing in pain as she was tiptoeing around because it was hurting so badly. And so, like anyone, she went to her doctor. She was prescribed all these different drugs that she needed to take, and she did different activities to improve her mobility, to manage her pain, and things like that. However, eventually, after some time, probably a few years, the medication things just stopped working. She told me that she was working out, and she looked up at the board, and she's at a CrossFit gym. For the next sentence, she saw that there were letters missing from the words on the board, which of course freaked her out. She went home and looked at one of the medications she was taking and found that letters missing from words was one of the side effects. That's a little eerie. She determined to find a way to more naturally provide a remedy of her disease, and after about 2 years of being on the AIP diet, she was able to get off most of the medication. So, don't ditch your doctor. That's not the theme of this podcast at all. We want you to make sure that you keep your doctor. Having a good relationship with your doctor is key to overcoming the pain associated with autoimmune diseases. But there's a lot more you can do internally rather than taking a bunch of pills. So let's start with discussing eggs. The main thing that cause the problem in eggs are the white of the eggs, and there's an enzyme the body actually produces called lysozyme. Now, depending on your accent, you might say it a little bit differently, and I'm from the West, so I say lysozyme, and others may say something else. But in any case, we'll call it lysozyme. And it's actually a bacteria. It's actually an enzyme that fights off harmful bacteria. And it also acts as a catalyst to destroy the cell wall in certain bacteria. So why is it bad destroying cell walls of bacteria? Bacteria is bad, right? That's what some would think, and that's what, if you look on any Clorox commercial, that's what they want you to believe. But no, some is good. We have loads in our stomach, so when lysine is in our stomach, it can wreak havoc. If you don't have the right balance, and if you're suffering from an autoimmune disease, this is already happening, and that's why we're trying to avoid it. It can do this because it is a tough enzyme and is resilient to heat and acid, so regardless of it landing in a stomach full of acid, it's essentially unaffected. This allows the egg protein to enter into your bloodstream, and that foreign protein can cause more inflammation in the body by forming autoantibodies. This is why it causes flares and things like that. That's why we don't, that's why we want to avoid consuming eggs. And overall, if you are just starting it, you need to avoid them entirely. Elimination phase is something we'll dive into a little bit deeper, but right now we're just going to discuss the different things to avoid on the AIP diet. Now, before I jump into the next segment here, I just wanted to talk quickly about an awesome supplement that you've probably heard of, and if you haven't, you're going to hear about it now. It's called the Paleo Perfection Protein. It is a grass-fed adhering meat and bone protein, actually collagen as well. And there are loads and loads of reasons that grass-fed is good. It primarily has to do with the omega-3 balance, and they're basically twice as high as your typical grain-fed. But there are two different flavors. There's the cherry chocolate and the natural right now, and there's another one soon coming, which is vanilla banana. The chocolate flavor and the cherry chocolate, if some of you are aware of some of the, obviously we talked about cocoa earlier, but the chocolate flavor is actually derived from carob in the cherry chocolate, so we're not breaking any rules there. And it's not to mention it's non-GMO, no sugars added, soy-free, allergen-free, gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free. It's all the bad stuff has been kicked out to ensure that it's the superior option to anything else. And if that wasn't enough, they added an organic superfood blend. So if you haven't tried it yet, again, there's two different flavors right now, the natural and the cherry chocolate. The cherry chocolate does have a little bit of stevia in it, and so you might want to wait to do that until after your reintroduction. But the other one is coming at the vanilla banana is actually being released in March of 2018, so coming up here in about a month. And all you got to do is go to the Primal Health and Nutrition store, which is at primalhn.com, and you can click on the store and you'll be able to find everything that you need. So go there right now and check it out. This will continue to stream regardless, so no worries. The next bit we're going to talk about here are emulsifiers. Oh, first off, what do emulsifiers do? If you've been in the industry, you're well aware that emulsifiers help thicken drinks, and it kind of helps with mouthfeel. Okay, if that's an acceptable term. And the way that works is it goes in there and it helps lift different ingredients and material in liquid and things like that to give it a feel like a thick smoothie or chocolate milk. They're trying to mimic that sort of thickness, and they accomplish that by utilizing emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are things like xanthan gum, guar gum, or something in that vein. Gums are typically utilized as emulsifiers. So the next time you look at a nutritional, supplemental facts, or even nutritional facts for that matter, you can locate those different items and determine that pretty quickly. It's like emulsifiers are like taking oil and water and trying to force them together, and so something a little more naturally comes about. In fact, there was a Georgia State University study that found that emulsifiers can add to the microbial composition of the gut to increase pro-inflammatory bacteria, which of course causes inflammation, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. And then it reduces the protective layer of mucus and intestinal lining, which increases gut permeability, which is, again, we're trying to avoid because that allows liquids and gases to pass through our bloodstream, which in turn, again, just kind of comes back to what our autoimmune disease is doing, and they're attacking our body. And when we give it additional fuel to, we throw more wood on the fire, gasoline on the fire, whatever metaphor you'd like to use, but that's essentially what it's doing. So this is our first micro podcast, and we went through eggs and emulsifiers. I hope it was helpful. Again, brought to you by Primal Health and Nutrition, where we are going back to our roots. See you later, folks.